Let's talk about taking money out of your RSP. There's a right way to do this, and there's a wrong way to do this. Every single time that you pull money out of your RSP, with the exception of the first time you ever buy a home, or if you're an adult and want to go back to school, you do have to pay taxes when you pull money out of your RSP. However, there are ways to pay less tax than you got back when you put the money in, which is the ideal situation. So I'm going to talk about the 3 life stages where you might pull money out of an RSP, and the right way to do it and the wrong way to do it. Now, first off, what you need to realize is that any time except in retirement, when you have converted your RSP to a RIF, you are going to have to pay what is called a withholding tax when you pull money out of your RSP. And this isn't the actual amount of tax that you owe, it's just their way of kind of protecting you from potentially not getting a huge tax bill at the end of the day. So this depends on how much money you take out of your RSP. If you take out less than $5,000, they're going to withhold 10% from that. If you take out in between $5,000 and $15,000, they're going to withhold 20%. And if you take out more than $15,000, they're going to withhold 30%. That isn't the actual amount of tax that you owe, it's just their way of kind of protecting you. So let's talk about this for a second. Let's say you're still working. Sometimes people do have to pull money out of their RSP when they're still working for whatever reason. And sometimes this is a terrible move and other times it's fine. So the way that it's fine is, let's say that you are a woman, you're on maternity leave, but you don't have benefits, and so you don't have an income. Or maybe you're a new entrepreneur that started a business and you're not drawing an income yet. Well, in that case, if you have money in your RSP, then you can pull money out of your RSP. So let's say you pulled out $10,000. Immediately, they're going to withhold 20% or $2,000. But your only income in that year on paper is $10,000, so you don't actually owe any tax on that money. At the end of the day, you're going to get that $2,000 back. So probably the better scenario for that person is to take it out in chunks of $5,000. That way they'll only withhold 10%. So now every time you take out $5,000, you have $4,500. And then at the end of the year at tax time, you'll get that $1,000 you paid back. Now, a bad case example is somebody that's making money and they decide, oh, I've got lots of money in my RSP and I really want a boat. And so I'm going to use Alberta tax brackets here. Let's say this guy is making $92,000. And that's his income, and he decides that he needs $30,000 to buy a boat. So what he does is he withdraws $30,000 from his RSP, immediately has a withholding tax of 30% or $9,000. But now his income at the end of the year is $122,000 because it was 92 plus the 30. So come tax time, he still owes an extra 6% in taxes because his tax rate and that chunk all landed in the 36% tax bracket. So he's going to owe an extra $1,800 come tax time. Next, let's talk about retirement. And the ideal scenario for an RSP is to create basically a pension income for yourself through your registered retirement income fund, or RIF. So when it gets converted to a RIF, you don't have to pay that withholding tax anymore when you're taking your monthly or annual payments out of your RSP. So in a good case scenario, let's say somebody wants to live off of $50,000, but they have $20,000 worth of CPP and OAS. So they decide to draw $30,000 a year out of their RSP. Now their complete taxable income now is $50,000. So at the end of the year, they're going to owe tax on all of the money that they made, which is just over $8,000. A whopping 16.2% on average that they had to pay to get their money back. And so they put in the RSP money and probably got back at least 30.5%, and then when they pulled it out, they reduced their tax rate to 16.2%. But then there's the other guy that says, you know what, I hate RSPs, I don't want to pay tax pulling this out, I have $500,000 sitting right there right now, I'm just going to take it all out and invest it in my non-registered account so I don't have to pay as much tax anymore. So he's still got that $20,000 worth of CPP and OAS income, and he withdraws $500,000 from his RSP right in 1 year. Now when he does that, he's going to have to pay the 30% withholding tax of $150,000. But now come tax time at the end of the year, he still owes way more in tax because his tax bracket is way up in the low 40s. So he's going to owe an extra 11.5 or something percent for pulling this money out, which is over $60,000. So he just lost $211,000 to tax because he wanted all of his money now, which is a huge mistake. You have to use your RSP as an income stream, otherwise it doesn't make sense. Now lastly, let's talk about death. And this is probably where a lot of people really start to dislike the RSP, because they're expecting a big inheritance from their parents, and then all of that money is in an RSP, and they realize how much of it is lost to tax. Because if you have a huge RSP, it is going to be taxed very, very heavily upon death, unless you have a spouse. If you predecease your spouse, that will just roll over into their RSP. So the exact same thing applies on death. If that person had a $500,000 RSP, that is going to be added to their income on their estate, and before it gets handed down to their heirs, the estate is going to have to pay approximately 40% tax on that amount. So that's where you really need to start developing an estate plan, if that's your plan. You want your RSP income to last as long as your life is, but if you're going to have way too much, then there can be a case to be made for pulling out extra over the years to reduce your estate tax bill. But that's where you kind of need to talk to a certified financial planner professional and develop a strategy that best works for you.